Comparing Ember to Equinox is kind of like comparing, well, it's just can't. There is no real comparison. Equinox is really two frames. You've got the night form with rest, pacify and mend, and I think the day form has rage, provoke and maim. So it's kind of really biased because that's 7 abilities versus Ember's measly 4. But this doesn't make Equinox a better frame. Maim only does 150 damage, and for these I am going to concentrate more on the last ability, so this is basically more World on Fire versus Maim than it is Equinox versus Ember. Because though Provoke is good, the Ember doesn't have anything that increases nearby allies, power strength, so that's not really fair. And, well, Rest and Rage, the second ability, depending which form you're in, also isn't fair. The Night form is great for healing, which is incredibly useful, and being able to swap between one that heals and one that damages makes her a hell of a frame. And I know I'm probably going to refer to her a few times as a her, but that's just because when you're in the normal Equinox form, like wandering around on the ship or on a relay, that seems kind of the female side of the whole thing, because night is the female part and day is the male part. But for some reason with Equinox, I couldn't get the damage on Maim to go past 195. I'm not sure if this is... I don't know why. I did have Transient Fortitude, though not maxed, and Intensify in there. I didn't use... I can't remember the name of the Rage one. It's not Rage, that does something else. But I didn't use that because Ember doesn't have it equipped. And, I mean, 195 with 42.3 range is incredibly useful. And you can run round, and both of these were done using a 20-minute survival with just the ability and the odd melee strike. With Equinox, that odd melee strike was more like constantly meleeing everybody, because it also, Maim, ignores flying enemies, so you have to have something handy that will take them out. But it's the rest of them, it wouldn't be fair comparing it, and I like Maim, but I like Mend a little bit more because it heals. But Maim has a trick up its sleeve, and it's that number in the top right next to the health and shields that keeps going up. And over time, it kind of builds up a huge buffer of damage. And eventually, if you run out of power, it'll just automatically use it, and it deals that damage out to enemies around you. Or by deactivating Maim, it will do pretty much the same thing, and it just takes that number and throws it out and deals it to enemies around you, which kind of makes up for the fact that, 195 damage versus Ember is just... it's nothing. And the reason I say that is if we jump over to Ember, World on Fire, though the range I managed to get from this was only 25.35, Equinox's range was 42, which is just a lot better. The damage for World on Fire is 400 as standard, which is, without damage mods, more than twice what Maim did with damage mods in there. Then you throw some damage mods on and the damage goes to 724. Yeah. So for the whole 20-minute survival with Ember, I think I only had to actually hit the infested ancients, because everybody else, including the heavy Grineer, they're all corrupted, but the heavy Grineer gunner went down before I got close to them to do any damage whatsoever. And that's ignoring the fact that Ember also has Accelerant, which will deal more damage to fire abilities, which World on Fire happens to be, as does Fire Blast and the other one. So, kind of like Provoke does for Equinox, that it increases power strength for nearby allies. I'm assuming it would work on her as well. It would make sense. If it doesn't, that would just be pretty silly. Actually, that's something that Accelerant should do. It should increase fire damage to allies around you as well, rather than have to shoot them with the fireball using the augment mod. Still haven't used either of those, because Frost has one too. Never used it. But anyway, still ignoring Fire Blast, Accelerant, because Accelerant and mixed with World on Fire can be quite evil up until like enemy level 45. Don't even have to shoot at them, you just run round and it will take them out unless there's a massive group of them, because it doesn't seem to take that many enemies on at once. In a group of enemies it'll affect one or two and the rest of them will still come after you. Hence more range for Ember would be nice. But the big problem here, which Equinox doesn't suffer from, despite World on Fire's massive damage numbers, I mean 724 versus 195 for Equinox, that's a massive difference. But with Equinox having that whole, if you run out of power, it will just instantly use that number that's been building up while you've been running around with MAME active, and it will release it and damage anyone around you. If you're surrounded by enemies and you run out of power with Ember, you're going to die, and die painfully. But for the lower level stuff, I mean, during all of this, MAME ran out about 19 minutes in, whereas with Ember, World on Fire went all the way to the end, mainly because it was a prime and I was trying to run around and find the spheres that give you extra power, so that was kind of cheating. But Ember just killed more enemies because of the higher damage number. As soon as I came close to them, even though it's got a shorter range, it was still taking them out. So which one of them has the best AoE attack here? Well, it depends on where you are and what you're doing. Equinox is probably better if you're playing with others, but if you're playing with yourself, you'll end up with hairy palms, but Ember would probably still be better.